So now that we have the number of shares being issued, the formula calculated, we need to go up here and make sure we're using the correct share price based on the conversion method, which in this case we're not. Right now we're just referencing the share price calculation as if there was no convertible debt. So in order to do that, it's another if statement, but this one's a little more simple than the last. So all we do is we say if, go over here to option 1, the pre-money method, equals 1, then reference the share price calculation for the pre-money method. Then hit comma if the percentage ownership method, well, a little bit of a snafu there. If the percentage ownership method equals 1, then reference the share price calculation for the percentage ownership method, which is here. And we'll say it once again, comma, if the dollars invested method equals 1, then reference this share price calculation. And if all that is false, if none of them equal 1, then we will use the share price calculation over here. So we'll just close those up, hit enter, make sure we're using the correct share price, and it looks like that we are. We have a 1 in the dollars invested method, we have 5.87 up here, and then the dollars invested method is 5.87. So now we need to know, we need to come over here and finish out our calculations for total shares. So the total shares as of right now is just this number. And then what is that as a percentage of fully diluted ownership? So as you can see, to calculate fully diluted ownership like we did earlier, we have the total shares divided by, or the total shares for each investor or entity divided by the number of shares outstanding. So this formula, we locked in the correct cell earlier, so we can just copy and paste it up here, 1.85. Now we can see that something seems a little bit wrong. Something seems wrong because what happened, this should equal 15% exactly. So what we need to do is we need to go in and figure out why we don't have the correct number. My guess is that the total shares post-financing here doesn't equal this. Actually, what it is, after thinking about it for a minute, we calculated option pool shares down here as well. The option pool shares being referenced is here. So what we need to do is we need to do the same formula that we did here, but instead of referencing the share price, we need to reference the option pool shares. So the way to do that quickest is to go through and lock in the cells that refer to the 0 or the 1 here, and then copy and paste it down here. And we can see, yeah, that's not correct. We know that's not correct. But if we double click it and come down here, we can just drag these up. So the red needs to go here, the green needs to go here, the orange needs to go here. So, and if all of that fails, then we need to go find that other dot, that other blue box, and reference option pool shares here. So I mentioned earlier that the percentages for the option pool were slightly off depending on which method that you chose. Over here, the one, the pre-money, the dollars invested, the percentage ownership method. And if you didn't choose any of them, you can see that the percentage for the option pool is a little low. This is due to the fact that this total shares post-financing here doesn't match up with this. And the reason that is because our invested funds are not correct. They don't take into account the additional shares being issued and the value of those additional shares being issued from the discount on the convertible note. So instead of referencing this cell for our invested funds, we can come over here and reference this cell. In which case, now we're at 15% flat. So that's kind of our check, if you may, on whether or not everything is working correctly. Now, if we put a 1 in here, we're still going to be over. And if we put a 1 in here, we're going to be over too. So, I mean, that's going to be true for all of these. They're all going to be slightly wrong. The way that we fix that is we make this cell not work off of the share price, but work off of these cells down here where we calculate the investor shares. Because as you can see, they're different. And this is not changing as everything else is changing. So we need to make that work. So what we need to do is we can just say another if statement. So if this equals 1, then you want the investor shares from the pre-money method minus what's being issued to the convertible note, right? So that's what's going to be left over for the investor who put money in the Series Seed round. Same thing again. If this equals 1, then do, oops, forgot a comma. Then do the investor shares here minus this cell. And then if this, the dollars invested method, equals 1, then do this number minus this number. And if all of that is false, then do this number over here minus this number. And this should make our 15% flat calculate correctly no matter what we do here, right? So it's 1 now, let's do 0. We see that with everything being zeros, it's still 15 flat, and even with this one, it's still 15 flat. So now we have it calculating perfectly to many, many decimal places, and we know everything is correct.